actually hate the romantasy genre. Oh my god, who said that? Who said that? I'm not taking it back though.
It had been 2 days since I learned that magic was real, and I was trapped in the evil shadow man Fargus's dungeon. It was wet down there, just like I was wet down there when I met the man made of shadows. "There you are, my love," he said as he slithered into my dungeon. His throat bobbed, then my throat bobbed, then his throat bobbed, and then he growled, "We're going to see the king tonight, where we must make love in front of him, and if we don't, he'll kill us both." "Why?" I said. "I don't want to make love to you even though you're the hottest man I've ever seen. I just want to go home and feed my 50 sisters and do my arts and crafts." "We must make love. We must make love in front of the king. Otherwise, he'll know we're lying to him, because, by the way, I'm actually not a bad guy." "Let's do it," I said. So in front of the king, he slipped inside of me. Shadows inside of me. Mist inside of me. A lot like if you put your coochie right on an air conditioning unit. It was so hot, but inside I was so cold. I climaxed to save my family.
Someone needs to write a romantasy where the blonde, pre-established boyfriend actually is the endgame love interest. And the morally gray shadow daddy, who you suspect might secretly be good, yeah, no, he's just evil. Yeah, looks aren't deceiving.
Ever since romantasy became a subgenre, a popular one at that, it has been taking a turn for the worse. I feel like there's so many discussions that's going on, and let's go ahead and see if we can clear it up today, okay? Let's see if we can clear it up. Let me go ahead and give you a synopsis, and let's see if you can name the book that I'm currently talking about. Yeah. So first we start off, we have a main character. She's a girl. She's either strong or she's very, very weak. She ended up having a tragic backstory that gives her pretty much anger. She's angry. She wants to be stronger, or she's stronger, but she wants somebody to listen to her. The way that her life is set up, she ended up getting a trial. When she ended up finally making it to this trial, she ended up meeting a guy that she don't expect to be with because she hates his guts. At least that's what the character tells us. She hates his guts, but as time goes by, she started to end up getting feelings for him. As the trial continued to keep on going longer, she realized that she actually don't hate this man. She loves him. And we always can get the description of dark, handsome, tall, whatever the case may be. And some people just like to call it their shadow daddy. The trial ended up coming to a conclusion, but woe and behold, she ended up getting betrayed by either a family member, lover, or a friend. Can you name a few books that I'm talking about, or can you even name one? Because I definitely can name a few. So ever since I ended up making my video, "Is dark romance becoming dangerous?" I wanted to do something a little different, but something similar in that realm, because I feel like this is a topic that needs to be had, okay? Like I said in that last video, I always feel like conversations can be had, especially on something like this. And today I'm going to be bringing the conversation to you. Do you feel like, or why is dark romance becoming so repetitive? Welcome back to my channel, and if you're new here, I'm Garcella Robinson. This is my little part of the world where I talk about books, anything that's happening in the book community, and of course, whatever I want, because this is my channel. So we already went over what the discussion that we will be having is why thinking of the past video, why is romantasy becoming so repetitive? So repetitive. I feel like there's so many books that I can name that literally has the same premise, just a different character, different male character, but all the same attributes, all the same playbooks. And we're going to be breaking down that playbook to see if this thought process is actually true. I just want to clear it up, because I feel like when I did my dark romance one, people was really bashing me, and all they heard was the beginning of my video and they didn't hear the end of it, okay? And I don't like when people do that, because if you end up watching more of the video, you'll understand what I was trying to get at in the first place. And that's more to bring it to topic, because for us to make our book space even safer for everybody, I feel like discussions must be had. And especially, we should be able to kind of challenge these editors to not keep on giving us the same stuff, or not keep giving us books that could potentially cause harm to anybody in the book community, especially if they don't feel comfortable in a space that's so creative. But there's only so far that your creativity can go before you're just putting stuff out for a money grab. And as much as as you can see, I love to spend my money on books, I don't want to sit there and support authors who is literally not even using no creativity, and they're just trying to push books out as fast as they can just to get my money, okay? Like, at least give me a bang for my buck, okay? I don't want to sit there and be giving y'all money and y'all can't do anything right. Are y'all is pushing out the same book that I just read last week? Like, so let's go ahead and get into it. So the first thing that we're going to be getting into is the definition of fantasy and the definition of romantasy. A lot of the times, especially when I was looking on TikTok, I was seeing a lot of people getting it mixed up. So let's go ahead and look up that full definition to make sure I'm not going off track, and to also make sure you guys aren't going off track either, okay? Romantasy is a subgenre of fantasy that mainly focuses on a romantic plot and the element of romance, while fantasy tends to not focus on romance. Fantasy can include a romantic subplot, but this does not mean it is a romantasy, as the romance is merely something in the background, if it's there at all. Now, the main reason I really wanted to have this conversation at all is because I am a lover of both romantasy and fantasy, okay? Like, I love both of them, all right? I'm not throwing no hate. I'm not doing any of that. I really just want to get down to the nitty-gritty of why it's becoming repetitive. What ended up making this entire shift in the first place. So let's go ahead and get into a little background of how romantasy came to be. The evolution of romantasy, from the Canterbury Tales to Fourth Wing, contributed by Caroline Reed. The word romantasy first came into the public vocabulary when it appeared on Urban Dictionary in 2008, but elements of the genre are as old as English fiction itself. Many of these early romance-focused fantasies were pretty formulaic. A beautiful woman, incapable of shielding herself from disaster, relies on valiant rescue from dragons, evil stepmothers, witches, etc., by a handsome knight. Cue the violins and the happily ever after. This basic plot, with variations on the particulars, has proven immensely popular across generations and cultures. But the combination of romantic and fantastical themes took a darker turn towards the end of the 18th century, when Gothic fiction writers like Bram Stoker, Mary Shelley, and Horace Walpole revived dark and haunting fantasies. And that goes more into my dark romance and how that genre came to be. But this is on how, if you want to check that out, it should be somewhere in the link above. But we're not talking about dark romance, we're talking about romantasy. Far from romance narratives of old, whose damsels always gleefully paired up with their saviors, Gothic novels dug deeper with themes of manipulation, coercion, and unrequited longing. Where fantastical creatures were once always villains, the thieving ghost of the Green Knight, the alchemical dragon of the canon demon tale, Gothic authors made them protagonists and anti-heroes, questioning the implications that humans are always the most virtuous creatures. But though Gothic fiction distanced itself from its predecessors by introducing darker themes and grayer characters, many of them still focused on male exploits, and here romance served as a symbol for desire or a distant subplot rather than taking center stage. In other words, it was still a way off from romantasy as we know it. While Gothic fiction was taking over in the literary circles, another genre was growing popular among ordinary readers: romance. Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice, published in 1813, was among the first romance-flavored novels to become popular among women. Previous attempts like Samuel Richardson's Pamela were less appealing for their lack of three-dimensional female characters. Pride and Prejudice introduced a radical new idea to 19th century readers that women have complex internal lives and even occasionally romantic desires of their own. Half-hearted pearl-clutching ensued, but the success of Pride and Prejudice made one thing clear. There was an untapped market of women readers out there who loved to see their experiences and desires represented. By the 1980s, further improvement in printing technology and more lenient social norms triggered a second boom in romance publication. This time, the genre splintered into categories, some setting the groundwork for the romantasy that's so popular. Paranormal romances in particular combine elements of horror and romance in ways that might feel very familiar to romantasy fans. Though titles were with paranormal and fantastical romance plotlines saw an uptick in publication in the 1980s and 90s, these subgenres remained niche. Authors promoted their work to small but loyal fan bases and sold mass-market paperback copies in airports and grocery stores whenever possible. But mainstream literary media didn't take these books very seriously. That is, until Stephenie Meyer's Twilight hit the shelves. The publication of the first Twilight book was quickly followed by a slew of similar paranormal romance series. And this is what ended up becoming why women end up starting self-publishing, and it contributes to much greater exposure of stories that publishing houses have not picked up historically, allowing for the popularization of spicy romances that might not have made it mainstream audiences otherwise. Authors of romance have been especially successful with self-publishing, which has allowed them to experiment with diverse fantastical worlds and pioneer new romantic tropes. This is where we find the humble beginning of some of Romantasy's hottest names, Sarah J. Maas, author of the cult favorite A Court of Thorns and Roses, whose popularity on BookTok brought Romantasy to a mainstream audience in the 2020s. The genre has transformed the literary landscape by introducing unprecedented emotional depth and centering in interpersonal relationships, expanding the definitions of both romance and fantasy. Reading Romantasy has always become a powerful form of escapism in an era marked by existential unease. As a host of global crises ranging from climate change to political instability to the impending threat of another pandemic grows scarier by the minute, these novels offer a sanctuary. They transport readers to alternate universes where the rules of reality bend to the transformative power of magic and love. Strong themes of justice and successful resistance efforts may be comforting to readers who see similar efforts go unrecognized in real life. And fictional intimacies forged in struggle might feel more real than the endless scroll of anonymous faces on dating apps.
I think the problem I have with a lot of romantasy novels that have come out recently is that a lot of them are just the same retired exotic lover trope with not as much commentary as like a really good romance novel of the past would give you, and definitely not as good commentary that a genuine fantasy novel would give you. Like, it's missing the substance of both of those things, and that's what really pisses me off.
After reading that article, it made me come to a conclusion. Like, I kind of already had a conclusion or a decision on what my thoughts were when it came to romantasy being repetitive, but this really just cleared it up so much for me, okay? Because after reading that, it made me realize that it isn't that romantasy, well, not that it is becoming repetitive, okay, but repetitive enough to being so boring is because it's starting to become a mass production of it. Like, if you think about it, like the same way how I talked on dark romance and the elements that we need to change in that, I do want to point out that for dark romance, there's so many other avenues that you can go down. The same with gothic romance. Like, you can bring more topics into it, but when you're dealing with fantasy romance, not that you can't explore other themes and elements, but it all boils down to a mass production of it. Because when you have dark romance and you have gothic romance, or even when you have romance, you always have your main authors that you mostly read from, and maybe you'll find another author that's somewhat different, but even when you find that different author, they kind of bring something else that they can add to it, either if it's online dating, being in another country, going, like, it always can change on each book. But for fantasy, you're not stuck in the same world, but there's only so much world building that you can do. There's only so much paranormal that you could bring, because it's always the same paranormal. Like, you could either do aliens, or at least consider, well, this is paranormal, but at least with fantasy, you're mostly dealing with high fantasy characters. And a lot of the times, for some reason, instead of doing something different, like, I guess you can still label it as fantasy, but what romantasy is, like a orc or something like that. Like, we really never see those, but a lot of the mass produced ones is fae. Like, let's be for real. A lot of the mass-produced romantasy is fae. Okay, and because of this mass production and because of its popularity, we're continued to get it pushed out. And the only thing that people feel like, oh, everybody wants them to shadow daddy, and that's exactly what we end up getting in tons and tons and tons of these romantasy books.
Enemies to lovers is shit. We don't like this anymore. Why? Because enemies have not been turning into lovers. They've been turning into lusters. They're not in love. They just have the hots for each other. And I'm tired of it. What should happen is enemies should be turning into reluctant friends. They should be sharing their trauma and then questioning their love for each other. That is how you do enemies to lovers.
Another place where romantasy is going wrong is because of the romance, okay? Like, I feel like a lot of the times with romantasy, not only is it being mass produced, but it's also being turned into a corny porn flick. Well, corn, if I can't say that on here. But it's turning into that, okay? Like, I feel like a lot of the times when you're dealing with romantasy, when they end up having, like, when it gets to that point, they end up falling in love. Like the girl said, they're trying to save their family, or they just want to be able to experience this in a time of need. I feel like a lot of the times the author be going so off topic because I feel like, you know when you walk into a room, right, and you're trying to make jokes but everybody's serious, and you're like, this not the time, honey, it's not the time. And in those books, that's exactly what I be feeling, okay? I be feeling like this is not the time and the place. When I end up reading Throne of Glass, I don't want to give no spoilers, but I feel like this book has been out for a long time, so this spoiler is needed. This is one of the books that I want to go over because I got something to say about Sarah J Maas, okay? But besides that, when it came to the Throne of Glass series, there's a scene in there when they end up getting, I believe it's like the 7th or 6th book. Now, to remind you, I read this 2 years ago. But there's a part in the book where they're literally at war, and the main characters, Aelin and I forgot his name, I'm not 100%, but they end up having intercourse or sleeping together right in the mid, like right while the war is going on, while their people is dying, they're having, you know. Or in just the book that I read recently, A Serpent and the Wings of Night, in that book, a similar situation. They're trying to get it on, and they are literally in a trial that has to do with their life. And I always say this when it comes to even romance books, when it comes to apocalypse, no matter the case may be, no way in the world am I thinking of, you know, getting one in the haystack if I'm having to survive for the night or have to survive for the day, or I have people's lives on my shoulders. So you'll just be reading a book, you like, yeah, it is good, but why? Why did we need this scene? We did not need this scene right now. And that was one of them. I feel like it's gotten to the point where it's gotten so out of hand. But I also want to not only blame that on the author, I also want to put some blame on the readers, is because a lot of the times when we talk about books, like, don't get me wrong, I love my little sexy time in my books too. That's why I love to read romance, okay? But I feel like we done talked it up so much, especially in a book that's supposed to be both romance and fantasy, even though it's centered around romance, is that we done made it so well known that we love this, we love the activities that happens in the book, that the author is starting to focus more on not even romance, more on the lust than they actually are focused on the yearning, the romance, the fantasy. They done completely threw it out the window and just decided to, yeah, let's just make the sex scene really good. Let's just make that really good, and hopefully they'll be okay. And now every author is starting to do it because a handful of us, me being included, because I don't want to be a hypocrite, done talked up that the sex part so much that now it's became a main thing in all the books.
I actually hate the romantasy genre. Oh my god, who said that? Who said that? I'm not taking it back though. My issue when it comes to the romantasy genre is that as someone who loves fantasy, I've always been a fantasy girl. As someone who just loves unique magic systems, someone who just loves watching the author honestly create a world out of nothing. My issue when it comes to the romantasy genre is that tassi with romantasy is always neglected, okay? The author puts so much focus on the romance, the banter, the relationship, the
the shadow daddy, as you will, or the pick-me girl, or the one that's kind of fucking annoying and doesn't seem to have a backbone. There literally doesn't seem to be an in-between of those two. Like, can we stop? But anyway, as time goes on, I've noticed that these authors, the world that they create, it's very surface level.
Now, I do have to agree with that creator's take on romantasy. And I was just saying that not too long ago. I do have to agree with her. I do love fantasy. And I'm not even gonna lie, I love fantasy a lot more than I love romantasy. But does that make me hate it? No. Okay, it does not make me hate it, because sometimes I just want a little something, and that's exactly what it gives me. But I feel like when we're starting to label romantasy as fantasy, maybe it should have some more fantasy in it. That's exactly why it's called fantasy in the first place, because I feel like a lot of the times with it being romantasy, well, romance and fantasy, yes, like the definition said, it's more centered around the romance, but that doesn't mean we need to neglect the fantasy element of it. And this is not to say there's some people out there, yeah, I'm speaking up for you, okay? This is not to say that people don't go into the book not wanting to have the whole entire fantasy element, and that is okay. But the same way that I feel like we should relabel, or not even relabel it, but I just feel like it shouldn't be a fantasy. Now, this is just my thoughts, okay? Because I feel like if you're going based off of a surface level world and you're calling it romantasy, you're pretty much taking the fantasy out of it. Like, it becomes not fit, especially when you're having like when you have the magic element, and let's say the characters never use their magic in the story. At that point, they're just humans with pointy ears. Or when they're basing it off of kind of like a world, they don't have no map, they don't have no magic system, they don't have no point of ending, okay? No point of ending. Then I feel like it just get misplaced in the genre, because at that point, it's just the romance. It's completely skewing what romantasy was supposed to be in the first place. Like, I feel like one book that I can go off and one book that I want to say really falls on this was one book that really falls on this. I was just talking about it because I was going to not really DNF the book. I was just going to possibly DNF the series, and that's Accomplice to the Villain. I feel like this was one that I just couldn't get behind because, well, I feel like it was very entertaining. Like I said, not everybody want that full exotic magical system mapped out. They have to explain how the world is working. Not everybody wants that, and that's completely understandable, okay? I was there once, okay? I was there once where I was like, fantasy just ain't for me. I want more romance than I want fantasy. Like, I don't want, like, give me a paranormal, all right? Give me some vampires. But with us labeling it romantasy, it should still have that 50% of element, or even a 25%, and it should be more thought of. But like I said, back to the Accomplice to the Villain, something that I can reference off of is that for Accomplice and the Villain, because her world building was so kind of misplaced or not really thought out all the way, there was so many holes in the story, like where the characters was. There was just where the characters was, how the magic system worked, how strong their characters was. If it actually played a part in the story, a lot of that was lacking. A lot of it was lacking. But it was still labeled as a fantasy because it's supposed to be in a fantastical world. Get what I'm saying? So with Accomplice to the Villain, it literally could have just been a romance book because it didn't have anything. It said it had the fantasy element, it portrayed it, but it didn't have the execution of a fantasy romance. But like I said, that doesn't make me hate these books. It's just making the genre become repetitive because of that. Because if we actually were to put some more emphasis in the fantasy world and actually thought out how our magic system would be, like, just think of how spectacular the book would be, okay? Just think about how spectacular the book would be, that not only are we getting that romance, but we're getting a fleshed out one that's, like she said, not surface level.
I think I've discovered what I hate about romantasy books that have been coming out lately. So I'm reading this romantasy book, Trial of the Sun Queen. This is not what I'm talking about. Like, this is not pissing me off. I'm actually enjoying it. But it made me realize this is considered romantasy, but I'm 30% in. No romance. No romantasy. No romance. No to see. Nothing to see here. If I pick up a romantasy book and you give me even just a sliver of romance in that first 25 to 30%, I'm sick to my stomach. I want to work for it. I want to work for it.
Now, another pointer that I want to hit is also the yearning, okay? Like, I love this creator's video because she literally hit it right on the nail. I feel like I don't like slow burns, all right? I do a lot of the times want it to come off fast, but I feel like when you're doing a romantasy, a lot of these books go past 3 books. Now, do their romance be very appealing? Yes. Do the lust that they have for each other be very prominent? Yes, it does. But what I want to hit on the fact is a lot of the times the yearning one, at least books that has more yearning in it with the romance, are the ones that we remember for a long time. Like, I feel like I know I keep giving references, but I feel like it really plays a part. It really plays a part to make the story even more fleshed out, and that's where romantasy is lacking. So, say for instance, I feel like it could go into the romantasy element. I really don't want to add this one because it's a middle grade, but I feel like, because me and my sister was just talking about it, and that is Percy Jackson and Annabeth. In that book, he ended up getting a lot. He had 2 other characters who could be potential romance, but he always yearned for Annabeth. And even with Annabeth, it took them a minute before they actually got feelings for each other. Yes, that is to play because they're supposed to be in middle school. But either way, after they actually do come to that conclusion, their romance is literally talked about for forever. I could literally pull up so many videos of people pretty much giving Rick Riordan so much props for how he done made a revolutionary romantic couple, a very powerful romantic couple, without making Annabeth weak or without making the male character have to be this heroic, I'll save you every time. Like, it actually gives her more of a voice than making her a weak, like a lot of romantasy books tend to do. And with that, she has her own strength. Annabeth have her own strength, and Percy Jackson has his own strength. But he'll still do anything for her. But he also knows to trust in her. But he, like, I know there's so many buts, but there's just so many. And it's because he gave us that yearning, all right? He gave us that yearning. Like, it was just so much love for the characters that you can actually feel the love through the pages. Now, for the romantasy books, every time that I think about it, like, once it comes to the ending of the book, you just be thinking, like, after all this done happened, like, y'all done kind of got together from a traumatic experience of y'all going through trials. He pretty much done protected your peace, and it just be making you think, would these characters actually last longer than the books? Probably not. They don't, a lot of the times, they don't even know a lot about each other. It's just straight lust, or it's a fate bond where they don't have no choice but to be together because they have these feelings. Like, it's never anything more than that surface level, the same as the fantasy, is because in some category it's always going to lack because the world is not fleshed out, the romance not fleshed out. So what do we got? Is it really even romance at this point? Like, yes. And then a lot of the times in romantasy books, like I said, with it being almost 3, 4, 5 books, depending on what the author wants to do, they already be together in the first book. So it's like the only thing that they can do is continue to keep throwing trials at them. So it's like we have to continue to see our characters who we could potentially end up falling in love with or kind of potentially end up not liking, but the story is still going on and we're still wanting to either support the author, or the story is just very enticing that we want to be able to see how it ends. Or for my girlies and guys who don't like to DNF, now we're stuck on a romance that has already been done. It's pretty much, they're already together, they already love each other, the bond is already there, there is nobody breaking it up, there's no potential, there's none of that, okay? There's no yearning.
Strong female leads? No. We want strong leads who are feminine.
What the creator said in the past video, I do have to agree with her on that. And I feel like with so many romantasy books, like, you would think that it wouldn't be as popular out as it is, especially with, like, you literally can look it up on TikTok and possibly even YouTube and see how many people are saying that the fantasy is lacking, the romance is lacking, just so many elements is lacking. And one of the main things that I feel like is lacking of kind of like the femininity in these romance books, because I feel like, I wouldn't say 100% sure, I just want to clear that up, but I feel like a lot of them have the stance of being a feminist. And I feel like with that, wouldn't you make your character OP in the beginning? You know, because I just want to like go off of fantasy books versus like not even versus romantasy, but per romantasy. And you notice that a lot of female creators, a lot of female authors end up writing their main character, they end up putting them as weak. They say they can't do anything. They also take care of their family. They don't want to abandon their family and stuff like that. But when you go into the fantasy genre, a lot of these men are willing to leave their family for the betterment of them, willing to go out there and, you know, just do whatever they can to support their family, or even if they're being tough on them, they are willing to leave and go do other things. But for women, for romantasy, we continue to keep them stuck in this, oh, I'm weak until this man comes to save me. And that's not to say that people don't like it. That's not to say I don't love it, okay? But a lot of the times we never end up going out of that element. And I'm not going to say that's for every romantasy book, because I feel like a lot of the diverse romantasy authors tend to already make their characters be strong without this man figure to be there. And that's not to say that white authors do this either. That's not to say that, okay? I'm just saying, like, when you go based off fantasy, it's kind of, there's always like a push and pull, because there's just always a push and pull. And I just feel like that's one, like, when you end up picking up a romantasy, yes, you want to be able to disappear from that world, but why do I need to either go do some trials or go meet a man, go end up having this man who helps me through the process of me becoming this very powerful person? Or even if I'm powerful, he's usually more powerful than me. Like, what message are we trying to send in romantasy? And this is going to get me into my next topic, is was romantasy made as kind of like in a way to take women out of the fantasy genre? Now, it made me go more into this topic when I was having a conversation with my sister, and we was going over romantasy and fantasy and how I love both, and of me making this video. And when I was telling her about it, it just made me come to, like, it kind of just was like, oh my gosh, like a realization, or as you can say, a realization that was romantasy put in place for women. Because I would say that fantasy is a male dominated genre, okay? And yes, romantasy has became a genre in itself as time went on, of it being more popular in 2008. Not to say that these books weren't already being produced in the way that it is now. But when you think of fantasy, not to say that there's not women in the fantasy genre, but a lot of the times when we end up saying, like, oh, there's romantasy, then there's fantasy, then there's fantasy romance. And usually it all has that element of one focus on romance, one doesn't focus on romance, or, well, one focus on romance, but it's not the main plot of the story. But it all comes down to it just being fantasy. And yes, even with it being a subgenre, which is okay, a lot of the times, for dark romance, it would be considered a subgenre, or just a lot of places it can be considered a subgenre. But I feel like if romantasy was still putting in that element of fantasy just as much as fantasy books do, it would still be labeled as just fantasy. Why did it need to be labeled romantasy for it to not even get more traction? Because it was already getting a lot of traction, and that's why it ended up getting called the genre that it did. But why would it need to end up becoming a genre? I know I'm really just running in circles. This is not even really to answer a question. It just had me thinking on if it ended up becoming a subgenre just to take it out of the fantasy market, because it got so popular that it was taking over for the fantasy kind of like net worth on what was being labeled, and a lot more women authors was being bought. And that's not to say, because you could see I got fantasy books too. So my money was going to both. But it really just, that's really just a thought. Like, if you have some thoughts on that, please answer down in the comments and let me know. Like, I'm not answering this question. This is really not part of it is part of the video. It's just not really specific on that. It just had me thinking. And yeah, it just had me thinking. But let's go ahead into our next one.
I don't know about you, but I am tired of the romantasy slandering. I've seen far too many videos of people talking about the genre, saying that all of the books are the same, the genre needs to end, they're all full of enemies to lovers with sky daddies and fae. And every single time I see a post like that and I go on their page, there's one common denominator. They're only reading mainstream books written by white authors with white, straight main characters. The issue is not romantasy. The issue is that you don't read diversely.
When we go back into the copy and repeat when it comes to genre, when it comes to this romantasy genre, I do feel like a little bit plays with a lot of mainstream authors getting pushed out, and not a lot of new authors is being able to get that spotlight because how pushed these other books are. And when you read from the same author, I feel like a lot of the times, it's like when music artists end up making their music videos, not even their music videos, when they end up making their albums or different albums, a lot of the time, even if you can think of a different story, you will always have that element of you in your book, okay? You will always have that element of you in your book, so a lot of your books sound the same. And that's not to say that all of them don't. It's just a lot of words end up getting reused, which is okay. A lot of words get reused, especially like, say for instance, when they're talking to their lover, or they're talking to a friend, or wanting to say something heartfelt. They usually use those similar words or same words in their books, because that new kind of mindset isn't kind of like, that new mindset isn't being placed in, because they're pushing out these books so fast and, pretty much just mass producing them. They're mass producing them. And I do feel like if you do want to be able to see a little difference, it can help for you to go into more genres that has to do with different settings or different authors, especially more diversity, instead of just reading the same authors over and over again. Because I feel like a lot of authors who are in the romantasy genre has more to bring to the table, but we're too busy being more focused on mainstream authors. So I do have to agree with that just a little bit, but even with that, like I said, there's only so far that you can go with these romantasy books. And either way, it will still be the same copy and repeat after a while. Look,
say what you will about the romantasy girlies, but those girls are always catching strays, and it is not fair. And I say this as a non-romantasy reader. I don't read romance, I don't read romantasy, but I will defend like hell their right to read whatever they want, because there's schlock in every single genre, and I am tired of pretending that there isn't.
I just want to say, I do not think romantasy is dumb, okay? I feel like romantasy is definitely a very innovative way to kind of announce for women, especially, even some men who do end up planning to write romantasy or want to get into the genre or is already in the genre. I just haven't picked up the books. I just want to say it's a very innovative way for women to be able to say, I am here, okay? For us to be able to say, I am here. Now, do I feel like we need to try new methods? Yes, we do. Do I feel like we need to go more into the fantasy element? Yes. And do we need to be able to push back and understand that just because another book is taking off and you're possibly going to get money for it, and I feel like you would get a lot more money if I feel like authors would get a lot more money if they were to, like, a lot of authors were to push back and stop going with the same narrative of other authors. Like, it's okay to be different. Like, ain't nothing wrong with being different. I would rather pay for books that is different than continue to pay for books that are the same. That's why a lot of the times I have, at least for myself, because I don't want to be a hypocrite, and I feel like this is a different way to change my narrative of it than just saying, oh, romantasy is stupid, or it's not a genre in itself. I feel like at least my way to push back is to focus on other authors who are speaking of something different, is trying new ways of how they want to write their books, and to being able to support those authors, and to stop, like, at least to slow down on reading some of my favorite authors who are continuing to go down this money pipeline when it comes to romantasy books, because I do feel like it's a pipeline. I do feel like a lot of them do make money if they were to just keep on mass producing the same books. And this is what makes me go into my kind of like my thing of, at least bringing back Sarah J Maas, because like I said, I ended up reading her Throne of Glass books. I read the Court of Thorns and Roses, her Throne of Glass series, and her Court of Thorns and Roses, and the Crescent City series. And I feel like with that, it made me stop reading her books, because same with, I feel like, because authors read those books too. I'm pretty sure they do. You know, they always be having their little comments on the back saying how this was the best book they ever read and stuff like that. And I feel like when it came to Sarah J Maas being able to be kind of like, I wouldn't say she's the head, but I don't want to put that entirely on her shoulders, because there's other authors who played a part and maybe didn't get as recognized, especially from books that she was referencing herself. But I do feel like for the romantasy genre, Sarah J Maas kind of like, she helped it, but she also made it worse, because now other authors want to end up kind of getting that fame or getting that popularity just as much as she, and they continue to follow the element that she's following. Especially, I feel like I said, she's not the first one who to think of Faye, but she is the one that got popular off of it, and other authors are kind of like riding her coattail and just giving us the same exact books. And I just feel like it's time to get off that coattail. It's time to get off that coattail. Like, she coming out with her own books. Now it's time for you guys to think of something else and write your own. Think of something different. Maybe we can get a knight and he don't have to be Faye. Maybe we could get like a high fantasy romance, because I'm not gonna lie, now that I've been reading well, not even now, because I've been reading romance. I've read fantasy before I even got into romantasy, and I feel like with that, fantasy has, at least in my opinion, has been killing the game when it came to romance, is because they are giving us that yearning that we need. All right, they is giving us that yearning that romantasy is not giving. And even in their books, they still give us that, you know, those explicit scenes. They give us those explicit scenes, but they, like I said, they also give us that yearning. And I feel like in this day and age, with everything being so sexualized, it's something in books that I kind of have been starting to get away from, unless I'm reading romance. And like I said, not to be a hypocrite, like, I love romantasy, but until it change, I am definitely slowing back on it. And I also will be exploring new authors, because the same authors just ain't hitting like it used to. They not. Now, when it comes to my solution, I feel like, at least after going over all of this, I feel like my solution in this is to really just put down old authors and start picking up newer ones who isn't following this same play, okay, who isn't following the same play. Like, I feel like it's a football move that everybody keeps on using, and nobody's winning, and it's starting to make the romantasy genre decline, at least for those who actually love it and isn't only there for the romance, and is there for just the same amount of fantasy that we are for that, you know, like, we're there for both of them, and we're actually looking for more depth and want to see better for our authors to be able to continue to support them. But like, if it comes down to it, we need to be able to pull our money back. Like, I know TikTok be, you know, putting out all them nice little videos that be making anything look good, but I feel like it's time to actually start looking within ourselves and exploring more authors, exploring more genres, just exploring more in general. And also for the authors to actually start getting more into making their fantasy world actually come to life and not what's between the sheets. Okay, so thank you so much for watching my video. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Once again, I do not mind a conversation. Maybe I'm completely 100% wrong, maybe you disagree, maybe you agree. I want to be able to see it in the comments, and I will try to reply to you as fast as I can, because I love conversations like these. And like I said in my dark romance one, I feel like all books need to have a conversation. I don't like when authors say like, oh, you shouldn't be, I mean, even readers, well, I wouldn't say authors, readers mainly. I don't like when readers say like, oh, stop bashing that book, stop bashing blah blah blah, whatever. We are able to feel how we want to feel and to be able to express that. Now, I do feel like the main problem when you are expressing those feelings is trying to make everyone else feel that same exact way, when just because when you're trying to make that reader feel the same exact way that you do because you don't like the book. That's when it becomes a problem. But discussions can be had over these conversations, especially if we want to be able to see more depth in our books, and especially if we want to be able to have our books actually be recognized. Like, I wouldn't say it's really that important. I don't think it's that important to get validation for people who don't even read the genre. I don't, okay? So the people who out there who be saying that mess, like, you need to zip it until you pick up a book. Until you pick up a romantasy and you actually have the same feelings as I do, then really the conversation should not be had because you're not in the genre at all. And yes, there are, like, don't get me wrong, I love fantasy and I have been hyping it up a little bit, but the same way that romantasy has its own faults, fantasy do too, okay? Like, fantasy, don't get no slide with me. Like, sometimes the way they be treating they women ain't right. It ain't right. And the way that romantasy, like that girl said.
The problem with most romance books that are being produced nowadays and getting popular is that the main female character, which the book is 99% of the time written through the perspective of, is only there as a lens to view the male love interest through. Like, you can tell that the author did not care about the female main character at all. They kind of have the same archetype of their backstory, and we don't really care about their character growth, but you know that they put so much time and energy and thought and passion into the male love interest.
The same way that she said that we just be looking at it through a lens to see the men, they have fault in that too, okay? But like I said, conversations need to be had for us to continue to better ourselves and to see where we can also change in that. But once again, thank you so much for watching my video. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Hopefully this wasn't too much for you guys. So yeah, I'll see you next time. Bye.